sometimes it's couched in a way that sounds a little bit more pleasant. There was one time I had a parent who was very direct with it. The subject line of her email was not black, not brown, not foreign, but important. And the whole present of the email was about that her student was overlooked for other students in the class who, for a variety of different reasons, and that was more egregious.
Sure. Hi Susan, hi Christina, you're
Hey,
back for
Mark.
number
Yay.
4, grinding my gears. Parent-student style. So I worked, as you guys know, for an access organization for 14 years called KIP, the Knowledge is Power program. So we worked with a lot of first-gen, free and reduced lunch Pell kids. And so this is one that's close to my heart because, it's when the well-resourced family acts like the under-resourced kid or the low-income kid has the deck stacked in their favor. And so now that I'm mostly working with well-resourced families, I'm hearing it more here. Well, my kid has no chance. They're not low income, or this school is going to give all their spots to the low income kid. And it's ridiculous on so many levels. First of all, it completely belies the statistics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the
100%.
stats. There's so few of those kids that actually get in and make it through a highly selective process.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the second thing is, it's the whole thing that, was said back in the Texas governor's race in the 90s about George Bush. He was born on third base and thought he hit a triple. It's like such a denial of someone's own entitlement. Like they're normally, when they say this to me, they're in some of the best private schools in the country.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying top dollar for their SAT tutor.
Yep.
They travel all around the world. They're exposed to all kinds of opportunities in the way of camps and in the way of like cultivating their hooks, whether they're athletic or musical or whatever. They're working with me. So they're privately hired, an independent private coach to help them. And then they're sitting here saying that, well, this school is going to take so many low income kids. So my kid has no shot, or is it such a disadvantage? And they just don't know. Like, you're talking, how many kids go to bed hungry with like food insecurity? They just don't realize all of the advantages that they have, and the fact that most of the positions at highly selective schools go to highly privileged students.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Raj Chetty study, right? 38
Mm-hmm.
schools have more kids from the top 1%
1%.
than the bottom 60.
The bottom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that one sets me off. Thoughts, ladies?
So with this one, obviously, yes, it drives me insane as well. But I also think it's sort of that projecting, because you have that fear, that your student may not be good enough. So it's the blaming the ref thing again, right?
Right.
And so you need some other scapegoat to justify why your student may not get what you expect them to get, right? And the reality is, as you mentioned, statistics don't lie. Like, these are a very small amount of under-resourced students who are actually even gaining access to the institutions that they're even complaining about. But more importantly, I sometimes hear this when students are writing their essays too. But it's a little bit more disguised as like, well, I don't have any adversity to talk about, or I don't have any tragedy or anything difficult.
Darn.
Exactly. And I'm like, well, congratulations, A, but B, that's also a lie, because everybody has difficulty and adversity. Like, you choose your hard, and so it's how you tell that story and how you overcame it, not necessarily the what. And that can be just as compelling. And so I think there's sometimes a skew to assume that there's a certain type of student that's more desirable than another, simply because you want to believe that thought to justify why you may not get in, right? But the reality is, Most highly selective schools just have more applicants than they have seats, and they have to turn down amazing students. I turned down so many perfect SAT, perfect GPA students. No shade against them; they were amazing students. But it wasn't because I was choosing this student over this student or that.
Right.
Like that's not what it is. Um, there was just something about that student that wasn't as compelling for that particular school. It's also, there are those students who will sometimes say these things. It's not like they're not going to college. They're going somewhere. They're getting into lots of great schools. The opportunities that they have are abundant. Um, but the frustration is that they feel that they're entitled to all the abundance.
Well, there you go. That's a good way of putting it, Christina.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christina, how does this come to you? Does it come to you in the form of like a parent saying, I don't think your process was fair, and they reach out after the fact, and I feel like, like you overlooked my kid and they should have got, like, how does it, I know how it comes to Susan and I, because we're in the counseling room and we're hearing it, how does it reach your ears?
It's usually a parent that calls. And sometimes it's couched in a way that sounds a little bit more pleasant. There was one time I had a parent who was very direct with it. The subject line of her email was not black, not brown, not foreign, but important. And the whole present of the email was about that her student was overlooked for other students in the class who, for a variety of different reasons. And that was more egregious.
Sure.
And, I actually did respond to that parent and say, what happened here? And she was like, oh, too much Chardonnay one night. And I'm like, okay. Don't be that parent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You write out that frustration that you might feel. The emotions are real. Don't press send.
Right. Wait till the next day.
Do not Christina, pick up the phone.
Does it come to you in the context of, like, I know you're not going to change your mind, but I just feel the need to vent? Or does it also come in the form of somebody trying to get you to, a form of an appeal? Where someone trying to, like, I think I want to know if you're open to consideration, because I think you really did make a good decision here.
I think it's both. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it will come in the form of, hey, this student didn't have as much as my student has, and let's reconsider. But a lot of times it's coming from a place of like, help me understand, but it comes off as venting. And so it's kind of like, we're not going to meet here, like I'm not going to tell you what you need to hear or want to hear, and so it sometimes ends up just being a conversation that just keeps going around. But regardless if they're looking for an appeal or if they're looking for an understanding, they're not going to get that, right? Because that's not the point, right? Mm-hmm. It's the fact that they assume that there are all of these other students who are less qualified than their students are getting in. And that's not even remotely the truth. So yeah,
that's
it
right.
doesn't
That's
necessarily
exactly
justify an answer.
We all had a lot of these conversations when the Supreme Court decision came down, 3 years ago this month, that put an end to affirmative action in college admissions, and how misunderstood that was, and how a lot of parents were basically, well, this will give my majority student more opportunities. And, when I would pick up on things like that, I would think, well, where are we going to go with legacy and athletic and all the other hooks that have been firmly in place since the dawn of time? And instead of trying to repair damage that had been done over the centuries, we're actually continuing to give advantages to the people who already have the most advantages. So I don't blame colleges at all for doing whatever they believe they can do as institutions serving the public interest, or at least trying to serve the public interest, to diversify their their student population. I think when we come up against it as professionals, we have to have a lot to say. We have to have something strong to say that's not offensive, but that is timely and recognizing a family's perspective, but also calling into question the way they're, the paradigm that they're using to look at this. There are lots of buckets in the college admission process, and that's, I find, a way that parents kind of can begin to understand that colleges have buckets that they're going to fill, certain compositional diversity initiatives that are part of their history, their mission and values, and their strategic plan. And these are the imperatives for their admissions cycle that are handed down by the trustees, by the president, by their communities, by their state, wherever their money's coming from, and that's what you're accountable to in admissions, and parents aren't really aware of that.
Christina, would you say you hear this more from a parent or a student when they communicate to you? Yeah, no,
it definitely
a parent?
More from a parent.
Yeah.
More from a parent, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it also has a lot to do with how we think about merit, right?
Correct.
And that there are certain populations or people who think that they have a lock on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That merit is expected to be presented in a specific way, and those are the students that are now worthy of that admission. And I think colleges have done a really great job of understanding the broadness of that. I used to always tell my staff that, we are looking for excellence, but excellence can come from anywhere, and really understanding it's the context of that student and the resources that they have to work with and what did they do with that. And that's, regardless if you had tons of resources or very little, but we're looking at each student within that context and looking for excellence within that context. But if you're not in admissions and you're not thinking about that in a holistic review, it's very kind of like black and white. Merit is this,
Right.
Merit equals this
Right.
test score, this grade, this, what have you. And that is part of the disconnect that I think is what's happening between higher ed and
Thanks, ladies. And if you want to get this content delivered right into your inbox, like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell notification so you'll get new videos as they release them all the time. We got one coming out every single day this month. So thank you.
Bye.